Welcome back to the Brandon's World Merry Christmas special. And here with me now for the first time in nearly 3 years on the Brandon's World podcast. I can't believe it's been that long. He is my best friend in the whole world. We have been to many events together this year, including one that we will both never forget, SummerSlam weekend in Cleveland, Ohio. Andrew Baca. Andrew, welcome back to the podcast, man.
It's been a while. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I think the last time I had you on was maybe when we did the mental health special. I think that was December 2021, which was really the premise of what has now turned into the biggest show of the year, the Brand's World Christmas Special.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't really remember too much of that because it was what the height of COVID and everybody was drunk or high. So you know, I think it's safe to say that I'll remember most of this one.
So we are here today because I wanted to have you on the show because I think we have agreed and disagreed on a lot this year in the sports world and beyond. But this really is a show where we take a look back obviously at the year in sports. I did my 2024 kind of top 10 moments in sports. I've done, a separate category with the WWE Slammy Awards. After the segment here that airs with you, I'm going to be doing my predictions for the 2025 and what's going to happen in sports. But I just think, between everything going on in the world and then everything that we have talked about, obviously now Belichick becoming the head coach of North Carolina, that story kind of came out of nowhere. Um, Obviously everything that went on with the election and sort of Caitlin Clark revolutionizing the sports industry, especially with women's sports. And then you add in, a lot of the stuff going on with the media rights. We weren't sure what's going to happen with WWE, AEW, the NBA. A lot has happened this year.
Oh, I know, and it's like you're kind of at that point in the decade where everything's starting to really shift, like towards like what's really going to start defining this decade. And then we're kind of seeing it front and center this year, just
Yeah,
sports wise and regular events wise.
yeah, I thought it was a very interesting year. Um, Obviously, as I mentioned, I really feel like, you know, it used to be March was the biggest sports month of the year, and it still was this year. We had all the stuff going on with the MLB season starting up, NBA playoffs right around the corner, NFL free agency, obviously March Madness and everything going on with that. But I have been telling people, and I've done interviews with, friend of the show and former colleagues of mine at Buckshore Radio and Believe in Media over the fall here. I can't remember a busier time for football. And I think with the baseball playoffs included and all the news going on in the world, and now we got Raw going to Netflix, obviously, in January, and everything that's been happening in professional wrestling lately. I cannot remember a busier sports time in the fall where I've told you between when I'm watching Survivor or The Floor or any other show, I have not had any time to watch any Christmas movies, barely.
Oh no, I totally get that, and I like as you know, I work nights, so like I've half the time I'm coming home and I'm just like I'm just grabbing whatever you know fast food places open past midnight, and I'm coming home and I'm showering, I'm sitting down, I'm packing a bong and hitting that and just passing out on my couch, so I don't really have much time to be watching the Polar Express. And if I am, I'm only going to watch like the first half hour and pass out. So
All
I mean,
right.
I still got to watch Die Hard and Home Alone and all these. I mean, Jesus. I mean, the only thing that I've Christmassy that I've really contributed was watching the Family Guy Christmas special, and that kind of sucked.
And at this time, to let all you viewers know, it is December 14th, so we are 10 days away from Christmas Eve. And by the way, tonight's a busy night. At the time of this recording, we got Saturday night's main event to return tonight.
Yeah, that's gonna be. That's gonna be really awesome. And isn't
So
Jesse Ventura a commentator on that?
Jesse Ventura is on commentary.
Oh, that's gonna be the funniest thing on the planet.
I just saw a clip right before this. I forgot that actually Mr. CM Punk still does Bellator MMA commentary, and he sort of gave a little hint that he might be on commentary tonight. Who knows? So that should be fun.
Yeah, that's going to be wildly entertaining. I will say that I am going to be watching this, and one of the reasons is because Jesse Ventura is the commentator. I mean, how can you not love that?
So speaking of wrestling, actually, that's a great transition. Because I wanted to bring you on because obviously you and I were together for SummerSlam weekend. Um,
Absolutely.
a weekend that we will never forget. We have planned it for months. We were obviously back and forth. We had to deal with a bunch of situations. I ended up getting, as the people know, because I've told this story a little bit, though I did not go in full detail on everything that happened that weekend, about the ticket upgrade and our experience that happened the day of SummerSlam. But you want to kind of take us through and walk us back through memory lane of that entire weekend?
Yeah, that was pretty insane. I mean, I guess we could start with what was it, Friday, right? Was kind of when
Yes.
it kicked off. Okay, so yeah, you were down there like early, like around like what? Like, didn't you get down there like downtown, like around 11
I
o'clock?
was downtown at 11 because I had went because you obviously were working nights and you didn't have that much interest in seeing the Damian Priest
Yeah.
Agora Theater documentary, the debut, and they had a Q&A session afterwards with the Judgment Day. And I had plans to take a few other friends, and then things came up, and so I ended up just going on my own. It was a phenomenal experience. And I ended up, believe it or not, sitting right behind the family of what was at the time El Champion.
Wow. I don't think I remember hearing that. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So
Yeah,
that was that. And then we came outside. There was projections that there was going to be rain potentially in the forecast on Friday, but it was more like maybe a sprinkle, maybe later in the afternoon. No, at about 2 o'clock it was a downpour. Um, and so, me having to be out in that with my physical disability, I ended up getting to Tower City, which was all blocked off, which was the other issue because the van I was taking could not drop me off their usual location. And because the way the system works, they have to, by law, there's certain place where they can pick you up, where they can drop you off because it is a door-to-door service. So, I had to essentially navigate my way around downtown in the soaking rain, which was fun somewhat. And then when I got there, obviously to check out the superstore and everything before you had arrived.
yeah. I'll tell you my story of getting down there. So I live 2 blocks away from what's basically considered the express bus, and so I'm literally a 10-minute ride away from being downtown, which is really convenient. Except when you're walking to the bus stop and you see the bus go by 5 minutes early from when the schedule tells you, and not even a minute later, you're walking to the bus stop and it starts pouring down rain. And so I'm walking to the bus stop and I get there, and of course, when I get to the bus stop, it stops raining and I'm already soaking wet. And I'm like, I please don't let this be an omen for the weekend. Like I'm just like, what? And I'm like, I haven't been out of my apartment for 5 minutes and I'm already soaked and I missed the bus. And so I'm like, son of a bitch.
So
And
I so I stop, I get a Dunkin' coffee. I'm waiting for you because you keep giving me updates like every 5 minutes.
yeah, because I told you, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on my way. The bus should be here. And then I'm like, oh shit. Well, it kind of came early, so you just sit tight for like a half hour.
So in that half hour, I go into the superstore just to check some stuff out, give you a little something to see like what you may like. And I gotta say, again, obviously you're downtown, it's WWE, it's a big event. Like I knew, prices were gonna be more than usual, but just in terms of stuff, I was actually kind of impressed with how much different stuff they had.
Oh yeah, they had a lot of, and it wasn't just like they're like, oh, just get like a $40 T-shirt that says SummerSlam on it. They had loads of different designs that were just awesome. Hats, bags, shirts, posters, everything. I mean, that you could imagine.
And so obviously, that was very fun. And then I thought, even though, obviously we didn't get the best view of the world, being out there for that 1 hour media event with Triple H and Michael Cole and Pat McAfee and all the wrestlers, that was a hell of an environment.
That was really cool, and I just remember it being so humid outside because
Yes.
the summers. See, this is what you talk about the winters in Cleveland being horrible. The summers here are just atrocious.
That's
I
your
mean, it's
opinion.
oh my God. I mean, it's like being in Florida, and not the fun Miami part of Florida, the Panhandle alligator swamp meth heads area of Florida. I mean, that's
Okay.
that's literally what it feels like. And so like I had brought a hoodie because it gets cool and then they keep the arena cool where they had SmackDown. So I'm like, okay, let me bring this hoodie and I'm just sweating through it. And if you didn't have your chair, I'd be holding onto this sweaty, soaking hoodie. And I'm like, I'm just gonna hang this on the back of your chair. And when I was out there dying, and it's just like, hey, here comes Pat McAfee, and I'm like, okay, good, this thing's starting soon.
So, and then, SmackDown the night before, I had told you going into it because I want to address the viewers here that you are not a regular watcher of WWE on a regular basis, but you do check out the
No,
major events and you do go to me with all these events because you believe, like I do. I think going to wrestling, honestly, more than a football game, a basketball game, a baseball game, like, I think it's one of the most exciting things you can go to.
oh yeah, I agree. And like I tell people, like I'll talk to a lot of my coworkers because um when Raw and SmackDown do come, because working at nights I have to have a quote unquote migraine so that we can go to these events. Um and I told my coworkers that if this was maybe, let's say, shit, maybe even 6 years ago, if you were to tell me, hey, did you want to go to Raw or did you want to go to SmackDown? And be like, I don't know. I mean, do I really want to spend money on that? But I mean, it's gotten so good where even people that don't regularly follow it. But it's like, hey, do you want to go to SmackDown? It's coming. It's like, hell yeah, I want to go to SmackDown. It's going to be a good show no matter what, especially around here because they always seem to put on a good show for a good crowd like us.
It feels like the old days, back in the day when you would tell your aunt and uncle, you see them around the holidays, hey, did you watch wrestling? And they go, yeah, I'll check it out once in a while, WrestleMania, whatever. I heard it was coming here. And the fact that we have NFL teams now actively trolling WWE wrestlers with gifs and emojis, I never thought I'd see the day.
Oh, I know. It's wild how part of the culture it's becoming again, and how like just one man getting ousted can kind of cause this little revolution to happen again.
It's unbelievable. And the funny thing is, because I mean, we did cover the documentary of that said guy, which was incredible. Some of those moments I cannot talk about, I don't believe, on this podcast. I don't want to dive into the gory details of because, dear God. Um, but
Let's just say there ain't no party like a Vince party.
yeah. It's crazy that, even the fact that WWE has pretty much gone out of their way to pretty much say, yeah, everything since 1982 in this company, we don't want to acknowledge anymore.
Which is
But
wild. I mean, it's just
it is, and for a company so based off history, and they do show clips and they do mention things obviously from past storylines because it's really hard to, but they try to ignore the fact that everything was created by a certain person.
I know. Well, I mean, and I'm curious, like, I mean, because realistically, like you can't Benoit the guy, and also like the whole Benoit, like Benoit has also kind of seemed to backfire because I don't know if you know, like I think the same we went and saw this in the theater. Um, was the Iron Claw, the
Yes,
same
that was a
film
really good
company.
movie.
Yeah, the same film company that's making that is supposedly are making a Eddie
Eddie
Guerrero
Guerrero,
biopic.
yeah.
Well, gee, guess who you're going to have to cast in a movie like that, and they already are. Is somebody to play Chris Benoit. So I mean, like, there's been people that have been mentioning they're like, are they going to kind of slowly transition him back a little bit because like if they're going to have this Eddie Guerrero biopic, there's so many key parts of Eddie Guerrero's career that involve Chris Benoit. Are you just gonna have to like do like a disclaimer like at the
Yeah.
beginning that's just like, hey, this guy did a horrific thing, but he's also like a major part of WWE history. I don't know. I don't know if I had to shoehorn that in, but I'm just kind of curious with that.
Yeah, I'll just say that, I know that you haven't seen the Netflix documentary in whole, but the Benoit episode is worth watching alone.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's like and just the magnitude of the Chris Benoit situation when there's and this is a small sample, but there's people at my work that don't know shit about wrestling, but you say the name Chris Benoit and they get irked.
That and oh God, the Owen Hart episode. Um,
I don't even want
that
to watch that
that was just to hear the reaction of the former WWE boss was disturbing. But what's
because he's a psychopath.
yeah. Okay. So let's fast forward then. Let's get into our SummerSlam day. The viewers know essentially the crux of the story that, we were given the runaround in the stadium. We had these exclusive seats. We couldn't find them. We eventually end up freaking backstage with all the wrestlers at
Oh, I
one
know.
point. And we end up finding our seats. We end up having a great time at the event. But I keep telling the people, I that day, if there were to find a day this year, it is still I can literally remember every little thing that happened that day.
Oh, I know. And I just remember like we were just sitting in traffic, like on this on the Shoreway Bridge, which is like one of the main roads into downtown, and it is the road that you got to get off of in order to get to Brown Stadium, which is where this was, and it was backed up. It was like we lived in fucking L.A. I mean, it was all the way backed up, and we're just sitting there. We're patient. We got down there early, like like we were supposed to, and so we're just
We
chilling in
were
the car,
at
bullshitting.
we were at the stadium technically at 4:30, and then our parking pass didn't work, like out of all things.
Yeah,
And so to make a long story short, we were technically at that building at 4:30. We didn't get to our seats till about what, 7:30, half hour when the show got in. I
yeah.
think I think Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan were making their entrances because that was the first match of the night.
Did you
Um,
tell people how that got spoiled?
Well, no, for us it got spoiled because we were walking, and I swear, I told you I knew it immediately because I recognized the signs when they show them on TV.
Yeah.
And then I saw the gorilla sign this way. I knew we were backstage.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, we saw Rhea Ripley and Dom and Priest, and I think Liv was there. I don't remember.
Yeah. And
Um,
CM Punk, you didn't see it. I don't know how you didn't see it, but CM Punk and Drew McIntyre walked right in front of you.
no, I did not, and breaking kayfabe there.
It was really cool being backstage. I just want to point this out is that you look at these guys and you're like, oh my God, they actually do exist.
Yes.
Like, it's
Um,
wild.
it is wild, and we're going to the first Raw in Cleveland since SummerSlam was there. That is the night or two
Quick, I
nights, I should say.
don't mean to cut you off real quick.
Go
Did
ahead.
you tell him what Billy did when he saw Cody Rhodes?
No, I did not.
Okay, this was the best. So you his older brother. So we're all backstage, and his older brothers just we just see Cody Rhodes like walking by. Now the lady that brought us back there, the whole reason why she brought us back there was because during Browns games, I'd imagine you can cut through that area rather easily. But they had the entrance set up to where like the area between I think like the entrance to
Yeah,
both locker rooms was
to
their backstage.
yeah, to where like that's where the wrestlers come out at.
Yeah. And so they were like, no, you can't. do this easy access to. This is where they really fucked up because they were treating it like a Browns game,
Yes.
and you can't do that with stuff. And I guess like they were doing it because what the Rolling Stones performed there, like a couple of weeks before
That's
SummerSlam.
right. And they said, we were talking to the workers there. They said, you think this was a disaster. You ought to see that.
Oh, and the Rolling Stones tickets were 10 times more than they were for SummerSlam. So I would have been, oh God, I can't even imagine the financial hit. But anyway, yeah. So we're backstage, and the lady takes us back there, and she's like, please don't. She tells us before we go back there, she's like, please don't record or like talk to any of them and everything. And we're like, okay, it's easy. And we're literally walking back, and we see Cody Rhodes walking, and your older brother just goes, Cody. And he looks over and like salutes us, and the lady's like, please don't acknowledge the wrestlers or record anything, please. I'm not trying to lose my job. And we're all fanboying, like, oh my God.
It's hard not to. It's natural
Oh, I
reaction.
know. No. And even like somebody like me who like doesn't watch like wrestling and everything, I'm just looking around, I'm like, holy shit, there's Dominic Mysterio.
Oh,
Like I'm
oh.
impressed by him.
A guy who gets booed out of the building, and you're like, holy shit, that's him.
Oh, like if I saw you in public, I'd just be like, yo, like, when you come to Cleveland, you're wildly entertaining, my man.
All right, so that was obviously a night we'll never forget. But I do want to transition a little bit. I want to move away from college or from WWE a little bit. I want to talk to you about college football. Um, I'm very fascinated to hear your take on this because you know me, I am a very casual college football fan. I used to not watch a lot of the games in September and October when these teams like Georgia and Bama, Clemson, Ohio State back in the day, would play Mercer or, Akron State or, whatever, make up a name of a school. Um, I do like this SEC Big Ten expansion. I think that it's given us better games in the regular season. But now, I mean, Belichick is under the ACC. Conference championship games to me don't seem to matter. It seems like you're more punished to me if you win them than lose them. I think the 12-team format is even more of a disaster than the 4-team format. There's no governing body in the sport. I think it's a freaking mess. But what do you think as an Ohio State fan?
Um, well, as an Ohio State fan, we're going to be getting in the playoffs no matter what every year, even with a terrible coach and a mediocre quarterback. Um, but it just seems like a lot of this is, at least a 12-team playoff is very forced. And it seems like it's a product of a lot of teams, like like I don't know if you remember, like when UCF or USF, whichever ended up going undefeated, and they didn't make the playoff, and like they were doing this like weird shit where they're like, oh well, technically we're the national champions, and it's like that's not how it works because even if you did make the playoff, you would have gotten destroyed by whoever you faced because you weren't that good. Like it just seems like I don't know. It seems like that was like the starting point where it was like a lot of these schools, and then what was it? TCU got fucked over one year. You
Yeah, and
know,
they're trying to give smaller schools a chance to believe they actually. I mean, nobody believes. And no offense to Boise State, you used to love their blue turf and everything that they had, and
I
you
still
know,
do.
no offense to Arizona State, but nobody believes they're the third and fourth best team in the country.
Oh no, and it's weird rankings too. I mean, Boise State. Yeah, do they have the guy who should win the Heisman? Absolutely. But I mean, are they gonna could they beat Ohio State? Could they beat Tennessee? Absolutely not.
That's the
It
other thing. I haven't really gotten into it that much of my show, but the Heisman Trophy feels worthless now. It feels like nothing. Feels like an
Well, yeah, because
afterthought.
because you have these dumbass reporters like Dan Orlovsky voting on it. I mean that idiot literally that pissed me off so much. I don't know if you saw that, but like Dan Orlovsky, who's on the Heisman voting committee, put out a video on Twitter where he's just like, "Oh look, Travis Hunter's team sent me this really cool like gift box. Now we know who you're voting for."
Yeah.
It's like what the fuck? You have a guy, was it Ashton Genty, who that's how you say his name, correct?
I
Um,
believe so, yeah.
yeah, he is putting up insane numbers, and then I hate these people that are like, oh, he's going to Boise State. Why is that? Are you fucking serious? Travis Hunter is on Colorado, which is practically the same team. I mean,
Yeah.
except you're talking about strength of schedule. Well, they both have had the similar schedule, and guess who's the better football player? It's not Travis Hunter. I mean,
Well, I
are we
I
really
don't know
doing this?
about that. I think the fact that Travis Hunter can play two-way, I mean, he could be the Shohei Ohtani of football.
Yeah, it's wildly impressive, but when you look at who's had a better season and who's made a bigger impact on college football, who do you think it is?
Yeah,
I think
no,
it's
that's a good point. I didn't think about the better impact on college
Genti was
football.
on nobody's radar until he was just like, "Hey, I'm really good at football."
Yeah, that's a great point. And what I have said too about the 12 team CFP is you guys were going to argue if it was four who the fifth best team is. You're going to argue at 12 who the 13th best team is, and they should have been in.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
I think the college football playoff should have expanded to only eight.
see,
To be
I
honest,
said six. I thought six would have been the perfect number. You
yeah,
get your,
six would have been cool. Eight's being generous as well too, because it's just kind of that's kind of
yeah,
where it's like,
but
oh, let's let a couple of these other schools duke it out, because even if you did, you'd have a little Ohio State's a 16 this year, right?
technically, yeah, but they're ranked eight.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you have an eight-team playoff. You're still having some of the top schools in, which is what you want. And I'm saying this as in an unbiased way. I mean, yeah, you do want some of those heavy hitters. Yeah, is it okay if they miss every now and then?
Yeah.
Yeah, is it a tragedy that Alabama's not in it this year? Not really.
No, they shouldn't even. That's my problem with the 12 team is they shouldn't even have been in the conversation.
Oh,
They
hell no.
they lost to Oklahoma, who was what were they 6-6 this year? They only scored 3 points, and then they lost to Vanderbilt. Now I don't think Vanderbilt slouches anymore. I think one of the things the NIL has done in a positive way is you're taking Georgia and Alabama's third or fourth best receiver, and you're making him the number one guy on Georgia Tech or Vanderbilt or whoever in the conference. So it is a little bit strengthening those bottom teams. But like I said before, when you have just commissioners of conferences running the sport and you don't have one governing body, I mean, this sport is now turning into a 365-day recruitment transfer portal nonsense. It's why Chip Kelly said, I don't want to be a head coach anymore. I'd rather be an offensive coordinator. It's why Jeff Apley, the Boston College head coach, went to the NFL and said, I'd rather be a defensive coordinator with the Green Bay Packers, which is why I don't understand the Belichick move.
Uh, yeah, I part of me has a feeling that the Belichick move is him saying, I've done everything that I can imagine in the NFL. Let me see if I can, make my mark on college football. I mean, if he can come in and turn a basketball school into a football powerhouse for at least 5 years, get a national championship, even at the lowest, for him would probably be a national championship appearance. I mean, like then it's like, okay, he really is the greatest football coach of all time. Because guess who else? And how many times have we said this? Have I told you he's the Paul Brown of this generation? Guess who started off in college and also dominated college football?
Paul
Paul
Brown.
Brown. So if he really wants to be like Paul Brown, which he very well can be, this is his way of doing it.
See, I see it as I know he's had a 5 year contract, but did you see the clause in the contract?
I didn't read like the full details because like a lot of this news has been breaking while I've been at work,
Yes.
and for people that don't know, we've had insane weather for this time of year around here, and I work outside at the airport, and it's hell during the winter, and so like I just caught like a glimpse of it, and then like by the time I come home, I'm tired, so it's like I've just been on like a weird schedule because it's been our peak season, but
Okay,
no, I
so
haven't really.
so
Anyway.
let me break it down for you because it's very interesting. So he's getting about an average of 10 million a year over the 5 years.
Mhm.
Um, so okay, as of June 2nd of this upcoming year, 2025, his buyout rate goes from 10 million to 1 million.
Hmm.
meaning if he were to leave at any point after June 2nd, he'd only have to give $1 million back. Um, so I've said this all along, even before that was reported. My first guess was because it was also reported that it is in the contract that when he does leave North Carolina, that his son Steve would essentially be the next in line, the way they did it in New England, where Gerard Mayo was essentially handpicked to be the next guy in line. I think Bill's doing this for 1 year. I think he's leaving. I think he's giving it to Steve, and I think he's going to try to find his way back in the NFL again. That's what I got from the whole deal.
That's very possible. I mean, because you like you were telling me the only offer, like the only true, and you know, and it's Belichick, so he wants to have control of an entire team. And
Which
I think you said that,
nobody will give him. If I have been read and I've heard and I've listened from all the reporting out there from multiple NFL sources. It sounds like Bill would have been the Falcons coach if he didn't want personnel control.
yeah, and that would have been interesting because you think he would have been, you think he would have been able to win with Kirk Cousins? Like,
Well, I don't think they would have gone after Kirk, and I don't think that Michael Penix would have been the first round pick.
oh well, oh no, that was a fucking boneheaded move.
Well, are
You
we
saw you
sure
saw how
about
pissed
that?
Arthur Blank
Let me
looked.
ask you, are you sure about that? Because right now, to me, it looks like a genius move. Because Kirk Cousins looks like he can't play quarterback anymore.
Yeah, he can't, but you can't deny that this quarterback class is a little bit better than last year, maybe in terms of at least with Michael Penix.
I think this quarterback class has a chance to be historic. I think that we are looking at potentially the best quarterback class of all time, and I'm not joking. I think we're going to get at least three Pro Bowlers out of it, if not four. I still think J.J. McCarthy has a bright future, specifically with where he landed. I think he's going to work. I think he's going to be Sam Darnold and younger in Minnesota. And I'll tell you what, I think Penix getting a chance to sit behind Cousins. He's very accurate. He has a very good offensive line. He's going to be playing most of his games in warm weather in the South. I think Drake May is showing that he can play in New England. I think Caleb has shown, even though he's not winning games, he is rising above what was a disaster this year in Chicago. Like, I look at all six of those first round quarterbacks, and I don't see bust right now out of any single one of them.
No, I don't either. I mean, well, Penix is kind of hard to judge because we haven't seen him actually like play, but I mean, I'm sure we'll get some more opportunities. Yeah, Caleb Williams is, I don't really like the guy, but he hasn't looked like Jamarcus Russell like I thought he might. So he's
You
already kind
you
of
are
kind of
big
beat
on the
me.
nails being painted and the attitude, and I just don't understand it.
Not really that. No, it's not that. It's just I could give two shits about that stuff. It's that he just acts like he acts like an entitled douche. That's what I can't stand about him. And like the shit that like what came out like before the draft where he's like, oh, I don't want to go anywhere but the Cowboys. And if anybody but the Cowboys drafts me, I want an ownership stake. Like just hearing that shit is like, who the fuck do you think you are? And what year do you think this is? You're the quarterback for USC. That don't mean shit anymore. I mean, this isn't 2005 where you have Matt Leinart going in the first round. You know, I mean, it's like it's just and you kind of prove that you can't really win big games in college. So how the fuck's that going to translate to the NFL in a division like the NFC North where you got Green Bay and Detroit and now Minnesota breathing down your neck? I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
I
it's
said before the year, was it everybody wrote off Sam Darnold and the Vikings? I thought they were going to be the best fourth place team in football. I did not think they'd be this good, but I thought Darnold had a chance to be the Baker Mayfield of this year with that coach and those weapons. People were laughing at me, and look at Minnesota now.
oh yeah, and it's just showing how great of a coach Kevin O'Connell is. I mean, that guy's a top, easily a top five coach in the league.
We know that coaching matters. It's the one sport where it does. So, listen, I have to ask you, um, you're a Browns fan. Um, I've talked about it with everybody. We know about the disaster that's looming with Deshaun Watson and Barry and Stefanski. We've had a lot of conversations about it via text. I'll just ask you here on the air. What not what you want the Browns to do necessarily, but what do you think they're gonna do with this whole mess?
My gut tells me that they're gonna bring back everybody, which is just a horrible thing that you can do. I mean, I have a feeling that Andrew Barry is heavily manipulating Jimmy Haslam because you watch one interview with Jimmy Haslam and he's a bumbling idiot. How this guy made his fortune in oil just blows my mind. Um, you need to fire Andrew Barry. That guy is a toxic front office worker. And I don't know how he is. I mean, sure, he's a great guy, probably is, but he is one of the worst general managers that we've had probably since what cocainus. I mean, this guy's just terrible. I mean, I would rather have Ray Farmer than this fucking moron. And that's saying something. When you execute the worst trade in the league, you still can't draft. I mean, what's going on here? How are you? That you're not the most qualified man for the job. I'm sorry. And when Vikings fans are on Twitter saying thank you, Andrew Berry, for making everybody forget about Herschel Walker, I don't think that you should have much job security. And the fact that this guy hasn't been fired yet, it just blows my mind. And then you were telling me that there's rumors going around that Stefanski's like, yeah, dude, I'm out. I don't want to do this job anymore.
Yeah,
You know,
there's
and if
rumors
that
going
happens,
around that Barry's leaking those stories also to protect himself. So
yeah, and it just shows what a scumbag this guy is. He's
yeah,
just a fucking scumbag.
but I will say, not to defend anybody, but just to take a look at what the NFL is. We know that in the NFL, generally, if you get the coach right and you get the quarterback right, I mean, look at the Texans. The Texans 3 years ago, I think, were as a disaster as maybe the Browns, the Bears, and the Jets and the Giants are right now. And all they did was get a quarterback and a coach, and look at them.
Yeah, gee, who did they get rid of that caused them to not be such a shitty organization? I can't quite put my finger on it. Would you
Um,
like? Could you refresh me on that man's name? I'm kind of drawing a blank. It's not like we haven't, it's not like he's not the most talked about athlete here since LeBron.
Um, okay, well, you know what? You mentioned LeBron, so I know we're running out of time. We got a few minutes left, but I wanted to ask you an NBA question. A couple of them actually, because we haven't really gotten into this a lot via text. I kind of wanted to save it for the on the air conversation. I want to first start with what's your thoughts on this NBA Cup? I hate it. I can't stand it. I was so happy that the Cavs' two losses they had were both in that cup to the Celtics and Hawks. 'Cause I didn't want to deal with that stupid crap.
Oh yeah, it's one of the dumbest things. It's one of the dumbest things that they've done, and it's just contributing to the downfall of the NBA. And I'm not trying to be a doomer and everything like that, saying like oh just because the ratings are down and all that stuff. It's becoming a cultural thing. I don't know if you saw there was a really good Twitter thread, and I don't know who it was by, but they were talking about how basketball is becoming an upper middle class sport, and what made
Mm.
basketball great that it was all you needed was a ball and some shoes.
And the
You
hoop
know,
anywhere.
yeah, yeah, and you had like these guys, like Karan Butler. There's a name there. There's a name for us
Oh man,
old
that's
school
an old
motherfuckers.
school.
But if you don't know how about his story, he started getting into basketball when he was in juvie. I mean, he ended up, they had a basketball court at this, you know, basically kids prison that he was at, you know, and he had height, and I guess the guards would let him practice, and he fell in love with the game and was like, all right, this is my way out. You got a lot of good stories like that. I mean, LeBron James came from fucking nothing. He has stories about him eating ketchup because that's all that they had in their fridge. But you just don't really have a lot of these stories really anymore. I mean, the whole Bronny thing has pissed people off because he's a terrible basketball player. In case you
He
haven't
is,
known,
but
I mean,
let's
it's
face it, the fact that he did get drafted by the Lakers and the fact that they did play a game together, I don't care that he's a terrible basketball player. I'm sorry, that was one of the coolest moments of the year because we've never seen it happen and we didn't think it was going to happen.
I guess, but but having them hype it up like this is going to be, Ken Griffey Jr. playing with Ken Griffey Sr. Here's the difference: Ken Griffey Jr. was miles better than his father. That's what made it
See,
interesting.
I think that was more media narrative than LeBron driven. Um,
Oh
I
yeah, no, I'm not saying it isn't. The media is definitely has a huge part of the blame with this as well. The NBA media is terrible. Shams is a piece of shit, by the way.
speaking of LeBron, I don't know if I threw this at you, but let me throw it at you now. No one is talking about it. I know he's on this little sabbatical or whatever he's doing right now.
Oh, I think I know what you're gonna say.
He's
Go
away
on.
from the Lakers. No. I said before, I don't think you know what I'm going to say at all because it doesn't have to do with the Cavs at all. Um, I had said that when Bronny got drafted, I don't think LeBron's waiting for Bryce. I don't think LeBron wants a Kobe Bryant as retirement tour. I don't think LeBron is chasing championships anymore. I think LeBron wanted one season with his son to play as many games with him as he possibly could. And I think LeBron at the end of this season is going to quietly hang up the boots.
I could see that. Also, the fact that JJ Redick is a fucking terrible coach, and that was mostly LeBron's idea.
Yeah.
Gee, who'd have saw that coming?
So
It's
the
almost like
NBA,
it's almost like they should have hired a real coach like Kenny Atkinson.
I mean, who would have thought that? I mean, I've been saying it for weeks here on this show that JB Bickerstaff deserves to be in prison for what he made us think of this Cleveland Cavaliers team. Who would have thought that, all it takes is a good coach and a change in offensive philosophy? But I want to get back. I want to ask you a couple quick questions just in
Real
general
quick,
about. Go
hold
ahead.
on. You know this, but nobody else knows it. My favorite JB Bickerstaff moment was during the playoffs last year against the
Oh,
Magic.
yeah.
When
It
so I turned the game on and we were like it was the fourth quarter. It was like the end of the third quarter,
was
start of
game
the fourth.
three, right, against
Yeah,
Orlando?
yeah. The first game in Orlando and the series was tied, right? Or no, no,
No, it
no,
was
no.
2
We were up
nothing.
2-0. Yeah, because everybody won their home game.
Yep.
But I just remember like, we were kind of in it and it was like, okay, we just kind of need to pull away. We need like one, like, like maybe like 14-4 run to really kind of get this going. And we're sluggish and they do, like the NBA playoffs, they do that mic'd up thing with all these coaches and they
Yep.
go over to our sideline. We're down like 12 or something. Okay, so we really need a good run. And he goes, we just got to chip away at it together as a team. Shut the game off. Because when you're doing that middle school shit, when you have Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, who shocker, the guy plays like Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett. Who would have seen that coming other than anybody who knows basketball? Like when you see a guy say that to one of the best players in the league, oh, let's play together as a team. There's no hope. There was no hope for that game. And guess what? They lost. So, so I
uh,
occupied my 20 minutes or 20 or 30 minutes with something way better.
Speaking of the NBA, and the TV and the playoffs and the mic'd up, I want to talk to you real quick about the new media rights contract because we know ESPN and ABC is retained. We know NBC and Peacock are coming in, and we know Amazon Prime, and obviously they have a new deal. And now it's reported that Inside the NBA is moving over to the ESPN, ABC networks. It sounds like there's going to be a game on every single day, which I don't love. And with the NBA's popularity and decline, as you mentioned, like it's a weird time for the league right now.
Yeah, and it's a really bad time for the league too. Is it bad that there's going to be games on every day, or not really? Do we know what is bad though? The lack of access that people have to them. The people wonder. You keep seeing this going around lately. The NBA ratings are absolutely terrible. And while I would imagine they are, they're not factoring in pirated streams. And which I get why they don't want to. But if you factor those in, the ratings are pretty average. The only reason why nobody's really watching it is because nobody wants to be paying $200 to watch their favorite team when not only 5 years ago you could watch it for free.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. I mean, if we're
Well,
being honest, I mean, it's
well,
just
I think not only that, but I think, and again, I like the 3-point shot. I like analytics. I think what Kenny Atkinson's done with this Cavs team of, shooting more threes than anybody. And, if you make more, you're going to win the game. Same way the Celtics have done it. But it makes for a really aesthetically unappeasing product. I mean, it is threes and dunks now. There is no mid range. There is no physicality really in the lane anymore. I don't know if you saw that clip going around a couple weeks ago where the Lakers and Suns shot nothing but 3-point bricks for 2 minutes straight.
No, I haven't seen that, but I mean, I totally get why people don't like the product of the game because it's not that it isn't good. In like like when you had like all those like old heads being like, oh, Steph Curry's ruining the game, you kind of like had like this like like this like okay boomer moment, but you're kind of starting to see it now where it's like, yeah, I kind of get what they were saying, where it's like everybody's just jacking up three. What are all these kids that are coming into the NBA now doing? They were growing up when Steph Curry was
Yeah.
the most dominant player in the league. All they're doing is jacking up threes,
And I think
and
the
it's like,
other thing
if you're good
is,
at it, go ahead and do it. But you got people that are not good at it that want to be Steph Curry, and it's like, no, dude, you need to go in, you need to go into the paint and get your point.
yeah, and we have, I don't want to say it's baseball level bad of marketing, but, we are at the end of LeBron, Steph, KD, and they still feel like the big three in terms of marketing in the NBA. We have guys like, Anthony Edwards and SGA and Jokic. And, if you want to put, Jason Tatum in there, and some of these others,
Donovan Mitchell's obviously
Donovan
another one too.
Mitchell, some of these other stars that maybe aren't superstars yet, but they're gonna be potentially there, but they just don't have that. I gotta get to a TV set. I think Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio is that guy, but there's two factors here. One is they're in San Antonio, which they did have a dynasty with Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich, but they were very New England-esque. Do your job. They were not a Kansas City, very fun dynasty. And the other thing is, nothing against international players, but Wemby is not American. And I do wonder if that is harder for people like us that are Americans to get a hold of, to wrap our arms around.
I don't think so because I mean you've had foreign players before that that people loved. I mean, believe it or not, a lot of NBA players' favorite players growing up could have been like Manu Ginobili,
Yeah, Dirk
or
Nowitzki,
Yeah, Dirk Yao Ming.
even
I mean,
like
these
way
are
back in the day, like Hakeem Olajuwon.
oh yeah, Akeem the Dream. I mean, my grandpa lived in Houston in the '80s when he played for the Houston Cougars, and and he saw him play a couple times, and it was just like I mean, he was so fun to watch. I mean, in terms of in terms of like past, if I had to pick a favorite player before I was born, it's Hakeem Olajuwon
Yeah.
because he just the way that he played the game was so pure. I mean, Tim Duncan was from the Bahamas, for God's sake. Everybody loved him growing up too. I mean, so it's just, I mean, that I don't really think that's the issue here. I think I really think it comes down to access to the game. AAU has been a disaster. What a lot of people don't point out is that
Yeah.
Kobe was a vocal hater of AAU and said that they don't teach the fundamentals. It's all about highlight reels and dunks, and
Yeah.
and like,
Well,
am I going to
that
be
and
flashy?
Adam Silver has also not embraced college basketball at
No,
all.
and no, Adam Silver is on a fucking Gary Bettman level run right now. It is
We,
fascinating to
we
watch.
thought David Stern was a bad commissioner, and he wasn't the best commissioner in the world, but at least he had a hold on the league.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are like, pointing out. This might not be one of the best examples, but I mean, it's just an example of like what a hard ass he was and how he ran this shit like a fucking mob boss. Like when Allen Iverson was like showing up to games and everything, and this was he was showing up in like baggy clothes and shit like that. David Stern was like, all right, everybody has to show up in suits and shit like that. And while it's kind of while it's petty, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, no, we're a serious league, and everything like that. Now it's just kind of you literally have the inmates running the asylum.
Yeah. Now I want to throw one more thing out to you because I thought it was interesting. I was listening to not the Herd with Colin Cowherd, but I was listening to Cowherd's podcast on the Volume, and he had on Nick Wright, and Nick floated out this theory that I did not think about, but I thought it was interesting. And he said, you know what? If everybody wants 3 points and everybody loves shooting the three, you know what they should do? Make dunks worth 3 points.
You know what though? But you don't have to do all this stuff. See, this is the thing that's like really aggravating is that they're like, well, how do we get people to watch? See, this is where the NBA being really tone deaf is good. This is what's really going to screw them. Is that they're like, oh well, what do we do to get people to watch? They're already doing it. Let's do the NBA Cup. Let's get people more involved. More
It's
interested
not
in this shit.
working at
No,
all.
and what makes you think that fucking with the scoring? You got people saying they're like, oh, add a 4 point line. Are you fucking kidding me? So it can be even more like how it is today.
I
You
always
gotta,
thought if you made a legit full court shot, it should be worth four.
okay, yeah, that would be that's something that you can try because it doesn't happen all the time. It might make it might make players get better at full court shots. I mean, how many times have you seen LeBron make full court shots with ease during practice? And can you imagine like players doing that shit during a game? Like especially like when you're in desperation mode,
Yeah,
you could be down 12, and it's with
three
I
full
don't know,
quarters
yeah,
theoretically.
yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
But
I don't know. I kind of thought the idea was interesting. Nonetheless, I thought maybe it would at least get people in the lane a little bit more.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think you gotta encourage more physical play, more trash talk. I mean that's a huge part of the game is missing, and it's
Yeah,
because you don't have a lot of these guys that grew up in tough environments that needed to be able to talk shit
yeah.
and fight in order to survive.
I
You
mean,
have these guys that are
is
showing
the
up to games and fucking
solution?
escalades.
Let me ask you this: is the solution just to go to international Olympic rules?
That might help. 'Cause you know how good the Olympics are when it comes to basketball. That's like one
Yeah,
of the only things that I
well,
watch.
well, this year it was because I thought, it was the last time that we were going to be significantly favored.
Yeah, true. I mean, nobody really seems to, I mean, Eastern Europe. I mean, God, what was it? Serbia gave us a hell of a fight,
Yeah,
and it's because they have some of the best
We
players.
should have lost in the semifinal. There's no doubt about it. If it wasn't for Steph Curry.
Oh yeah, guess what? Steph Curry ain't gonna be there at the next Olympics.
No, and neither is LeBron, neither is KD. And I think Anthony Edwards has that mentality. I don't know if anybody else on the team does. I mean, we got Tyrese Albert. Not that he's a bad player, but you don't think of him as an Olympic level player, in my opinion.
No,
Um,
Anthony
so
Edwards is like the only kind of hope because Anthony Edwards is like one of like the only few players in the league lately that'll dunk on somebody and get in their face and go, "Yeah, bitch."
but
And
no, even now he's
you need
averaging
that.
15 threes a game. Like he's gone back to just jacking up the three.
Yeah, I mean, and now it's and I don't know if these guys are just stat chasing or what.
That
I mean, it's just
and the All-Star game was a mess. And now they're gonna do this group play. I don't even want to watch it. I think it's the dumbest idea they ever came up with.
no.
Uh,
The All Star game should be, and they've suggested this for football, and I think that it's getting to the point where you should just do this with basketball, where the Pro Bowl or the All Star is just kind of like a stat, you know,
yeah,
where it's
abolish
it's
it.
like
We
yeah,
don't
like it's
need
like you
it.
had a good season, you're doing really good. We'll acknowledge that you were an All Star for the year or whatever. But they don't want to be playing this game, you know.
Well, Andrew, that is all the time we have on this Parental Recording Special. I appreciate you coming on. I thought that worked out great. I thought we really dove into some interesting topics. I want to nuance stuff that we'll obviously get into more as the NFL offseason here sort of commences. I'll throw one more bone at you. You got any predictions for a Super Bowl this year?
Oh God, I really don't know. Because it feels like it's anybody. It feels like it's wide open.
I
I
mean,
mean,
the NFC feels like it's going to be a contest between Dan Campbell and Nick Sirianni of a drinking game of who's going to make the worst fourth down decision.
yeah, and I don't know. I know. I could. God, I don't know. I mean, the Lions. Part of me wants to see the Lions in the Super Bowl, but also like as a Browns fan, I kind of like that they're in a company with us and the Jaguars, who've never made the Super Bowl. And so I kind of don't want. I mean, being in that company with the Jaguars is kind of like it's like as as a fan of a very historic team, the fact that we haven't made the Super Bowl yet is really really bad. So, um, so I kind of like to see the Lions lose so we can stay in that category. But I don't know, man. They're playing really really good, and it's just they figured it out. And so I could see the Lions in there. AFC, I mean, you know, is it going to be the Chiefs? I don't think so because they've been finding ways to win. This year. Do I think that they're going to win against the Browns tomorrow? Not really. I mean, there's part of me that's thinking that they're gonna probably that the Browns are going to beat that the
There's
Browns are going to
part of
beat
me
them.
thinking that too. I'm not willing to go that far, but there's part of me thinking that too at the time of this recording. Um, before the year, my Super Bowl pick was
Ravens,
Chiefs
Lions.
Lions. Okay, so you got Ravens Lions. I thought you might go Buffalo, which would be a Super Bowl preview tomorrow. Um,
Yeah, I mean, they're a wild card. I just
okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think they can make it, but I don't know. They're kind of they kind of just seem like an afterthought in that spot. Bills Lions though would be an awesome Super Bowl. That would be an all timer.
Well, Andrew, it was good to hear your voice. I'm sure to the viewers of the Braves world, it's been a long time. We've done more shows in an actual studio than we have a podcast recording. So this was excellent. Loved having you on. Thank you very much. And when we come back here on the Brains World Christmas special, it is time for me to give you my 2025 predictions in sports, the last segment before we wrap it up.